Grounded is the latest title from developer Obsidian Games. Yes, that's Obsidian Games. Joining the plethora of survival games that have flooded game libraries in recent years. Best summed up as late 80s classic, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the video game, does this early access title have enough potential to stand out in the heavily crowded genre? First, we need to address that early access part. A lot of early access games are buggy messes that wallow in development hell before being released, with minimal developer support after the fact. Grounded has been in early access for around 18 months at the time of recording, which is sometimes just long enough to be a red flag, although with multiple updates every month and major content patches around once every 6 months, things are looking good so far. We'll come on to the bugs, and the bugs, in due course. For the premise, if you've seen the film Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and if you haven't, then why? Then you already have a pretty solid idea of what's going on here. 4 kids are shrunk to the size of an ant and need to forage and fight for survival in your run-of-the-mill suburban back garden. Sounds easy, right? As for the story behind this, well, there isn't exactly a story, though there are a large number of audio logs and notes to be found around the game world, each with the same sense of humour that one expects from Obsidian as of late. There is a story planned according to the roadmap, although there's no confirmed date as of yet. This is Obsidian Games though, so we have high expectations, mind you. You play as one of the 4 kids. No character creation here, either solo or as a group as we did. Each has a distinct enough personality, portrayed via the well-acted voice lines played during interactions with most everything in the game, be it enemies, allies or objects. For some, the silent protagonist is preferred, but Obsidian seem to have found a good balance between giving life to the characters without completely removing your immersion as one of them. There's no distinguishing factors beyond this, however, making character choice somewhat arbitrary. This may change in the future, of course, such as through base stat variants, though we would encourage it be optional if so. Talking of stats, there are 3 key components to this within the game. First are the base stats, such as health and food drain, which are increased via milk molars found hidden around the game world. Weapons and armour provide the usual damage and damage reduction, with the ability to upgrade weapons and improve their stats, though there's no armour upgrading currently. Finally is buffs and debuffs, and there are a lot of these with several sources. Armour and weapons provide buffs such as immunities and lifesteal, food may poison you or give health regen, and mutations are a little more varied, each unlocked by completing a specific challenge, say 60 perfect blocks, which allows you to enable a perk, in this example refunding stamina on a perfect block. You can only have 2 enabled at once, increasing to 5 with the aforementioned milk molar upgrades, and these can be swapped freely from within the game menu to cater to your situation. Talking of situations, this is a good time to talk about the bugs, the many-legged kind. Though still in development, there's a decent variety of creatures to encounter, 25 plus some variants, 2 bosses, and more slated for the future. These range from the skittish aphids, indifferent ladybirds, to the seriously aggressive mosquitoes and spiders. Oh god, the spiders! In the early game, the sight of a spider was reason enough to nope the hell out and run, with our first successful kill being met with genuine elation. They become easy enough in time, but provide a great goal to work towards. At first. The difficulty curve as you move up through the ranks certainly feels well tuned. Let's cover the survival staples. Food and water are par for the course, although they do go down a little too quickly for our liking, especially in the early game. After several hours, we reached a point where this became less of an issue via upgrades and construction, but there were situations where venturing out, it still felt like it became an issue too quickly. On construction, crafting is pretty much par for the course. Gather resources from the various flora, fauna and detritus around the garden, and either craft said item in your inventory or the crafting station. What's nice to see here is that the crafting station will pull from nearby storage boxes, which, despite having the option to label, was a godsend when our filing system kinda fell to pieces. Building is, as in any survival game, something you will spend a fair chunk of time doing, and thankfully it's somewhat a smooth experience. Smash rocks and chop grass, to gather materials and transport them back to build a hut or a castle or, whatever takes your fancy. There's a good variety of building parts, many of which you will need to unlock. We'll come back to that. Allowing imagination to be the limit. The build system is well implemented, with very few instances of things placing somewhere other than where it was meant to go. You don't need the materials to plan your build either, as Obsidian have opted for a sort of blueprint system, wherein you place your build via holograms then fill them in, as opposed to crafting parts in your inventory. As larger items, such as grass planks, are carried by hand rather than in your pocket, this does mean a lot of walking back and forth from a storage depot in larger builds, though walls and the such are cheap enough on resources that it doesn't feel disproportionately punishing for going a little overboard. As for the aforementioned unlocks, this is where Grounded differs from other survival games. There's no experience bar, no levelling up so to speak here. Instead, you unlock new crafting recipes via two methods. Many are unlocked by analysing enough of its constituent resources at one of the many analysers found around the garden, and this alone is enough to get through the whole game, if with somewhat of a challenge. The second is through purchases from Burgle, the burger-flipping robot turned science assistant, at the cost of raw science, a currency found rarely throughout the world, and as a reward from analysing new materials or completing quests issued by Burgle himself. Although he doesn't offer all of his recipes at first, you need to find the relevant chip to get these, of which there are 8 currently, most at the end of a dungeon-type challenge. These are vastly different from one another, each requiring the right items to consider attempting, let alone succeed, and vary in length and difficulty greatly. That all said, aesthetics. Sound effects are good, and music is subtle but appropriate, at least when it plays. A lot of the time there's little to no ambience when bumbling around the world, sadly. Looks-wise, the cartoonish and oversaturated looks are a style that ages well, and it fits the setting perfectly. Frame rates are solid and the game is well optimised, although the excessive use of depth of field may be the reason for this. At times it felt like I was playing the game without my glasses on, and the prevalence of guides on disabling depth of field is evidence enough that this is a somewhat shared consensus. As a final word, we need to talk about the bugs, this time the virtual kind. As this is an early access game, bugs are to be expected, though we didn't actually encounter many within the game itself. What we mostly struggled with were networking and client connection issues. Desync was a major problem when around large player constructions, despite all playing having full fibre, high-speed internet. We also had an issue wherein one member of the group was constantly kicked from the game with no error, and that was the person that was in the same house as the one hosting. In an attempt to fix this, we tried inviting via the Xbox app rather than Steam, and found that the Xbox app wasn't even able to recognise that the game was installed on 2 of the 4 computers. We couldn't fix this. After spending far too much time on these issues, it seems Microsoft, who are the publisher for this game and responsible for the Xbox Live services that the game uses for its connections, have decided to just wash their hands of the issue, as in every case we came across, their paid staff have closed threads, either accusing Steam of being the cause — side note, you don't need to work in tech to know that that's very clearly not the case — or they blame the developer, even though, Microsoft are providing the connection services. Take that as you will. To conclude then, Grounded is your run-of-the-mill survival game, laid on top of your run-of-the-mill adventure game. This helps give the players direction, something a lot of survival games often lack. With a great building system, good looks, frequent ongoing updates, and Obsidian's pedigree for a good story, it has the potential to be one of the standout games in the genre. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Grounded is available now in early access on PC and Xbox for £25 or $30 US. With that, we thank you for watching. We'll catch y'all next time.